West Ham were grisly, gritty and nasty in that game. That was more the David Moyes style of football than it was the Graham Potter style of football. I certainly think that. Forget what you think you've seen if you watched Everton play Manchester United, particularly in the first half. That was Everton on the front foot, playing almost camped for a lot of the time in Manchester United's half. Very, very high line, pressing the ball. We didn't see too much of that during Moyes' time at West Ham. It was more park the bus. And I think that what we saw from Potter yesterday was very much park the bus. And I'm really glad we did it, by the way, because you had a pragmatic Potter who's probably had a look and thought, OK, right, I need to start winning here. Maybe the players at my disposal are not the ones that ideally, for my vision of West Ham in the future, they're not going to be this bunch of players. I do think there'll be some of them, and that's a video maybe for another day, the ones I think that will survive the eventual cold. But it's a case of, right, OK, let's play solidly, let's park the bus a bit, let's play on the counter-attack, and let's try and get the best out of this team. And I thought the team thrived as a result. I really, really do, and I do not mind him doing it. I think it's the sensible thing to do, actually. I mean, I was just amazed and thrilled by so many of the performances. And when I say amazed, maybe amazed is too strong of a word. There were a lot of players who were almost back to their best, and I think, you know, certainly in the case of Mohamed Kudus, it was funny because Arsenal were rumoured to be interested in him. If you go back and look at maybe news reports from October, November, Arsenal possibly were going to be making a move for Kudus in the January transfer window. Of course, it never manifested itself, and his form this season has been crap, really, hasn't it? And he got a ban, which wasn't great, but I think that ban that he got, whilst I thought it was ridiculous and the way Mickey van der Ven completely play acted, he still lost control. Kudus lost control, and I think that was probably reflective of the way he was feeling at West Ham at the time. If you remember, he'd had I don't want to call it a punch-up, but he had a dressing room argument, if you want, with Hulan Lopetegui, and things weren't great, but I felt he bounced back, and I thought he looked like his old self against Arsenal, and I do think that maybe Mikel Arteta, if he had been thinking about perhaps putting a bid in for Kudus, he might have watched that yesterday and thought, oh yeah, that's the guy. Fair play. I mean, I don't pay too much attention to managers when they go into press conferences or they do post-match interviews. They probably don't want to be there. They want to be back in the dressing room with the team. And there's a load of cliches that managers use. It used to be, oh, it was a game of two halves. You don't hear that one anymore, but it's a way of sort of deflecting and sort of shutting down because they don't want to say too much. So I sort of switch off when they speak a lot of the time. And there was a couple of phrases that Graham Potter used post-match, which ordinarily I'd have switched off, but I wasn't on this occasion. I thought, yeah, actually, he's making a good point. He talks about team ethic. He talks about creative mentality. He talks about the group. Normally, that sort of crap sends me to sleep. It really does. But I thought he was right. I thought it was a team ethic. I thought it was a collective mentality, and I thought it was all about the group. And if you've seen I think you might have to go on West Ham's social media channels, look at the players walking down the tunnel. So obviously someone from the West Ham in-house media team has recorded the players as they've walked down the tunnel. You look at their reactions, and you do look at that, and you think, team. That's a team. And I think back to videos I was doing earlier on in the season, and I had two things I was saying about, a few more than two things to say about Lopetegui at the time, but two of the more regular things I was saying was that I didn't know what his vision was. I couldn't see from Lopetegui where he was taking the team in, 6 months' time, next year, year after, whatever. But we didn't look like a team. We absolutely didn't. I felt, and I articulated this on a number of occasions, that we were relying on a group of individuals, or individual brilliance, or individual talent to get us through. That was a team performance that we saw yesterday. That was park the bus stuff. And that was quite familiar to us. We've seen all that before. That was David Moyes played like that an awful lot. It's why I sort of like rally against this stuff that you're hearing about Moyes now, whereas you could have put this, as I said to you before, this Everton version of Moyes we're seeing now. It'd been a long time since we've seen that at West Ham. Everton yesterday, I don't know if you saw the game against Manchester United. They played on the front foot. They were winning the ball in the opposition penalty area, basically. They had a really high line on a lot of occasions. It felt like at times they had most of their team parked in Manchester United's half. They were winning the ball back. They were scrapping high press, high intensity. That's not how we were playing at the end of last season. But I think if you look back to a lot of the park in the bus, a lot of the low block stuff that we did under Moyes, I felt that what we saw yesterday was probably quite reminiscent of that. And I do wonder if people like Kudus sort of thrived because of it. But I didn't blame him for doing it, and I thought it was the right thing to do. And he has quite possibly had a look at what happened against Brentford. Well, no, not quite possibly about it. That the shape of the team, the formation was different, the way we played was different. And I know they're different teams, but I will say this much. I thought that Brentford had a better attack than Arsenal did. I know Arsenal got injuries and so on and so forth, but in that game, I certainly think that was the case. I just thought it was the right thing to do. Revert back, be pragmatic, get realistic, be gritty, be determined. By the end of the game, look, plenty of players made mistakes. West Ham players made mistakes throughout that game. But there was such good collective mentality, it didn't matter. And they ended up being small mistakes. You know, give away possession. A missed header was sort of swept up by somebody else, by a teammate. Everyone was playing for each other. I really thought, the goal, I loved the goal. I loved the goal because we've been defending so deep that we didn't have enough players to get up the pitch quickly enough. And if you look at that goal again, and look if you can get a sort of replay of it that takes you all the way back to Bowen, where he's very much in our half, and then the work and the amount of distance he has to run before he gives the ball to Wan-Bissaka, then he gets it to head it in the box. And the amount of time that Wan-Bissaka has to kill to wait for him to get there. I'm quite sure that Graham Potter wants to play a style where we're almost like swarming over the opposition. There's players everywhere in attacking positions. This wasn't that. It was like the longest counter-attack I've ever seen, but it was only involved 2 players. And it took an understanding from both players of what needed to be done and how they were playing. And listening to Graham Potter speak afterwards, the interviewer, I think it was a West Ham interview rather. It wasn't like the Sky Sports one or the BBC one, but the West Ham interviewer asked if they'd sort of targeted that area of the pitch, and I thought Potter's answer was quite good. How they knew that chance would be few and far between. They had sort of explored, you know, looking at it down that area, and I thought, you know, if that is a trained move, and by the way, the earlier move where Wan-Bissaka ran down the wing and then Bowen mishit with his right foot would suggest that was something that had been trained. Would suggest that it is working, and what they're doing on the training pitch is working and working well. And I was just thrilled to see that. Look, there's a load of joy about us, you know, getting one over on Arsenal. Of course, it's nice to burst their bubble, so to speak. I think the stuff that happened with Declan Rice was funny. You know, you should have signed for a big club and all that stuff. And the picture, which we spoke about yesterday and was in yesterday's thumbnail, of Jarrod Bowen sort of heading the ball towards goal whilst Declan Rice stood in the background and winced. It was brilliant. You know, that was really, really good stuff. And there's loads of pictures going around on social media of Declan Rice with his head in his hands on the bench and all the rest of it. That's really good from a West Ham perspective, of course. But actually, it's not all about that. It was about us getting a little bit of hope and a little bit of a spring in our step for the remainder of the season. And beating Arsenal is a really good thing to do, because it does stop a lot of the talk about relegation. There wasn't much talk about relegation. And it's something that Gio brought up. Me and Gio were doing a video on Patreon the other day, and we were talking about, it was one of our behind-the-scenes videos, and we were talking about how people sometimes get angry about things that aren't there. And we were talking about stuff that you read online, but there's no evidence for it. And after the Brentford game, that we were reading things of people saying, I can't believe that West Ham fans want... This is other West Ham fans, by the way. Some West Ham fans saying, I can't believe other West Ham fans want Graham Potter out already. And no one was tagged in it. And the reason no one was tagged in it was no West Ham fans were saying it. And just sometimes people just say stuff that isn't being said at all. And I never saw anything like that. I never saw any West Ham fans saying, oh, I think we need to get rid of Graham Potter. Yet some people invent that in their head and then react to it and get offended by something that hasn't even happened. It's not as common as you might think, but you do see it. It's quite prevalent on social media. And I think... So there's not a massive reaction, because I don't think there were a load of West Ham fans saying West Ham are getting relegated. But those that were, I think that just cuts that one off. That's an extra 3 points, and we just don't look like it. And I do think if we could get back-to-back wins against Leicester, that would be absolutely magnificent. I know I spoke about him yesterday. Ollie Scarles was... I loved what Potter said as well. Whilst I do believe that Potter plays the game to the media, I do believe there's a sincerity in him. And I thought what he said about the group ethic and the team ethic, that made absolute sense, what he said when I applied it to what I'd seen at the Emirates yesterday. I thought what he said about the academy, thanks to the academy for Ollie Scarles. Oh, that's a shrewd move. That's a smart thing to do. He means it. He means it. But there's a difference between thinking it and saying it. That gives everybody a lift. What has happened? You can say the stuff. You can say the words when you come into the job and say, "Oh, I'm gonna look at the academy. I'm gonna work closely with Mark Noble, and I know West Ham are famous for the academy." And you can say all that stuff. I think everybody says that. Every manager said. I'm sure Allardyce said that he was aware that West Ham are famous for the academy. I'm sure Moyes said it. I know Lopetegui, even Lopetegui didn't say it. He did that sort of faux meet and greet with George Earthy, who did really well by the other day. Bristol City against Man of the Match display, 27-minute cameo, 2 goals, won the game for Bristol City against Middlesbrough. But I thought that was very contrived. Lopetegui's meeting with Earthy, with Tim Stighton stood in the background, and all that type of stuff. Anyway, I just, it's one thing saying it. There's one thing. It just sounds a bit like PR spin, doesn't it? Giving it all the, I'm gonna look after the youth at West Ham, and I take this seriously. He's talked the talk and he's walked the walk there, and I thought Earthy's performance was rewarding. We've got a player there now. I wasn't happy, particularly if you'd have watched my review that I did last week after Brentford about Emerson. I was not happy with him. I thought he was a bottle job. I was not happy with that at all. I'd absolutely laid into him on the Patreon player ratings, and he got a very, very low score as a result. Maybe if football's football, when you go over the top sometimes in the things you say, because you react, And I think I might have even said I don't want to see him play in a West Ham shirt again. That was a reaction. I didn't mean it like that. I think he's been a decent enough signing for us. Now I've calmed down Emerson, but I certainly would look to limit his playing time this season and get him out at the end of the season, particularly if teams like Juventus want him. I think we've had good value for £13 million out of him, but that was going to be more money that we were going to have to spend in the summer, and we're not going to have that big a budget. And it's one thing having academy players come through who can take up places in your squad. Say you want a 25-man squad, you can get 3 or 4 of them that take up places on the bench. Brilliant. But if you can get one in your first team, and that's amazing, because it stops you having to buy a player. And we now don't have to buy a left back, or as it seems, what Graham Potter's going to do is play with wing backs. We don't have to go and spend money on one. The irony is, Carl Walker-Peters is probably going to be available. I know he's really a right back, but he's been playing for Southampton on the left a lot this season, and I think he's a really, really good player. And I think we still should try and get him on a free transfer. Maybe that would be him playing on the right, and Wan-Bissaka would go in at right centre back. Tadibo, I thought was brilliant yesterday, by the way. There's any number of things, and you're going to need a squad. Just look at our injury list. You do need a squad there, but Ollie Scarles stops us needing to buy a left wing back, and he played against Arsenal yesterday, and against Wanyeri, he played against the in-form young winger in the league, some might say. He's been really, really good. And he did a great job. He did so many good tackles, so many good interceptions. I want to say this about Scarles. I mentioned it, maybe it's his second game under Potter, and I stopped myself from saying, I basically almost compared him to someone in the way times his tackles, and somebody came back and said, Did you mean Bobby Moore? Someone asked me in a video afterwards, and I actually did. And I don't want to compare him to Bobby Moore as a player, right? That's not what I'm saying, all right? Because I don't want to pile too much pressure on him anyway. He plays in a completely different position. But the way he used to time his tackles, the way he used to keep his eye on the ball, it's a skill. Tackling is a proper skill. And a lot of people, particularly I think in the in a modern way, YouTube videos are clipped of compilations of players, of tricks and flicks and Rabonas and sounds a bit rude, that, doesn't it? Rabonas, I was going to say pancettas. I don't know what a pancetta is. Is it? I know what a pancetta. I do know it. I do know what pancetta is really. Is it panenka? Something like that. We call it a pancetta. All that sort of stuff. That's what people want to do the highlight reel on. That's what people want to clip. That's what people want to show on YouTube. But there is because it is skill and it is technique, all the rainbow flicks and all that. But there's a real skill and a real technique to tackling the time you tackle. I'll tell you what, he's got it. Scarles has got it. Really pleased for him. Really pleased with what Graham Potter said about his mentality and his character and all that stuff. It's great. I've been miserable. I was miserable last week, actually, after that against Brentford. And even I was pleased Potter said that. He said, I didn't feel great after Brentford. He said, but, he said that's the changing nature of football management. So, absolutely brilliant. Really, really pleased. I like it. I think he probably looked back. And I thought this at the time. I thought he'd look back on the formation that he played against Brentford and thought, oh. And I know they're different teams. Arsenal are going to come at you more than Brentford will. Brentford will sit back and so on and so forth. They're different games against different styles, against different teams. I get it. But I definitely thought that we had more about us. I thought... I was pleased. I was pleased he got Emerson, he got Carlos Soler out of the team because they were two players that bottled it. Now, what I would say is when Soler came on, it was only at the last minute. He made a really good tackle. I think it was on, may have been Raheem Sterling. But I think you need to do that. When players look like they can't be asked and when players are just not putting in a shift, then you have to drop them. And I think then you send out a signal. I still probably wouldn't buy him, Soler, truth be known. But it's, I was just pleased, really pleased. Collectively, absolutely brilliant. As I suggested, they had 20 shots. They only had 2 on target. The amount of players that were blocking and stop throwing their bodies in front of the ball and stuff like that, and heading the ball clear and all the rest of it. I don't think there wasn't a bad player in that team. I think everyone put in a shift, and they were all they were highly charged. They were all pumped up when they walked down that corridor after they'd waved and clapped the fans at the end and all the rest of it. Anyway, there you go. I'm going to leave it there. I was going to say I waffled on for a long time, but you know what? It deserved it. I thought that was really pleased. Really pleased with the team. Really pleased with Potter. Pragmatic Potter. And, a bit of a park in the bus, bit of a low block. Don't mind that at all. Long may it continue. And then it can get to summer, get some more players in who are more suited to his style, and then incrementally sort of improve on a few things. But there was a lot to like in that game. Anyway, I'll catch up with you tomorrow.